All right. So my number two movie that shaped our coming of age experiences is An Education from 2009, directed by Lone Scherfig, starring Carey Mulligan, Peter Skarsgård, Alfred Molina. Quick logline from IMDb. A coming of age story about a teenage girl in 1960s suburban London and how her life changes with the arrival of a playboy nearly twice her age. So, like I was alluding to a little bit in the intro, I did not watch this movie when I was a teenager
Hmm.
myself. I watched
Hmm.
this movie in my 30s, kind of when it came out. But it sort of resonated with me on a deep level of two things, I guess. One, as a teenager or somebody in college who's doing well in school and, had a good home life, friends and everything, but sort of had this manifestation of like a charmed sort of erudite sort of life in my
Hmm.
head of like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if I like went to Europe and lived over there and
Uh-huh.
went to museums and had friends who are kind of cultured and in the art world and things like that. And it's because it's sort of the opposite. Like this movie, like my parents were, I think, kind of very globally minded, and we watched movies from all over the world and had my mom made food from different parts of the world. So I
Hmm.
had a taste of all of that, which made me want it even more. So it wasn't like I was deprived. It was more like I was wanting, more of that. So I think this movie resonated with me on that level of because Carey Mulligan's character, like she's an A student, she's been groomed to go to Oxford, and
Hmm.
her home life is a little bit different, I would say, than mine for sure. Like her parents are not really at the same level as she is, versus she has sort of this, side life in her head about being French and going to Paris and things and such. So that's sort of one big theme of this that resonated with me. And the second one is not specifically romantically, but other people who entered my life during college days who were charmers, but
Hmm.
I don't think they had their head and their heart in the right place. And I
Mm.
think without getting too personal, they probably took advantage of me and I lost sight of what mattered. And I lost sight of school and grades and the people that really mattered. And they took me for a ride for a little bit. And I
Hmm.
think there's some of those aspects of this movie that also resonate with me, which are all about coming of age, right? Like, how do you trust in yourself? You can be all figured out in your own mind as a young adult, but it doesn't mean that you are. And you
Right.
have to go through some trials and tribulations. So I'm getting ahead of myself, but had you watched this movie or heard of it?
I had heard of it, but I had not seen it. I remember the trailers, and I know like Carey Mulligan got a lot of attention for this role, and it was an actress that I had been following for a while. She was on an episode of Doctor Who before this, and I was like, this
Mm,
actress is going to be somebody, and now she has got this amazing career. And I guess I pictured in my head it being like a romance movie, and it isn't, and
yeah,
that surprised me in a good way. Actually, I was like, okay, I think I know where this is going, and then there is a twist in the film, and it turns into something that I was not expecting it to be about, and which are, I think, a lot of what you're talking about, the sort of the seductiveness of when you're not an adult yet, but you kind of want it because you think there's an idea of your head about what that is and what that
yeah,
means. And it's not all that. I mean, it is some of that, but what she learns in this movie and the education that she gets then is it's not what it's cracked up to be. There's a darker side of that, and a darker side of wanting to rush into that too quickly. And there are consequences to
yeah,
that, and sort of skipping some things that, like going to school, which is something her parents look, you just got to go to school. That's part of what it means to grow up. And she wants to rush right into the living like the high life as like a young adult. And you can't really, or at least what this movie is saying, is you can't really do that. There are no shortcuts. You got to go through life. And I think that's a lesson she learns the hard way, unfortunately, because she gets bamboozled by the lead male in this film.
yeah. And then I think the other interesting thing about the movie is because of its time and place, it brings up these good questions about, okay, what is this hullabaloo about getting to Oxford even about?
Right.
And Carey Mulligan says at some point that I've had the best months of my life going to amazing restaurants, watching musicians, looking at great art, all of
Mm-hmm.
it. And all you're telling me is that go to Oxford. And then after that, what am I supposed to do? Because the options and opportunities for women at that time were fewer and far in
Right.
between. And all the female idols that she has in her life, which are her teacher and the headmistress played by Emma Thompson,
Mm-hmm.
to her, they seem kind of limited in their life. And she feels like she's having a much better time. But again, to your point, life is much bigger. It's not just about going to museums and, having a rich cultured life, though that can be a part of it. But
Sure. Right.
it's also about being self-sustained and feeling confidence and fulfillment in what you do. Because it's a great scene when Carey Mulligan visits her teacher's home and she's like, "Oh, your place is so nice." And
Mm-hmm.
it's an independent apartment where the teacher does the thing that she loves and enjoys and
Right.
seems to have peace, and she's not going to parties. Maybe she is if she
Mm-hmm.
wants to. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I think the movie has lots of different shades to it, and it's not hammered on your head. It's very light and organic. Same with the parents too. Like for the
Yeah.
first half of the movie, you kind of look at the parents from her eyes because it's from her point of view, who seem to be kind of grating on her, and the mom is sort of checked out of sort of typical housewife, and
Mm-hmm.
the father is all about penny pinching, but is very very keen on her going to Oxford, but
Mm-hmm.
not for any big reason other than just this is your ticket to getting married,
Right.
perhaps,
Right.
at
Right.
some point. But then later on, as Carey Mulligan kind of goes through this whole episode with Peter Skarsgård's character, who, by the way, also seduces the parents equally.
Yes. Yes. He's a
Uh,
con. Yeah, he's a con artist. I
he's a
mean,
con man,
yeah, he
exactly, and
totally
very
is.
good
Yeah.
at it. He's literally a
Mm-hmm.
con man,
Right.
actually.
Actually, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
But then you see the parents in a totally different light, that they are supportive of her. Actually, they want her to land on her own feet, and it's not just about getting a ticket to getting married. There's more to it. So yeah, I guess what I'm saying is that everybody's presented in different lights, and it's not what meets the eye. Just like the movie you thought
Yeah.
might be something else, and it ended up being something else.
Yeah, I mean, even as I was watching it, you think again with the parents, okay, they're overprotective, Alfred is controlling, they're just telling her what to do, and you're like, screw them. Like, yeah, you should go
Mm-hmm.
off and do what you want, like live this free life. And you're seeing, like you said, these other women that are they look trapped in these lives.
Yeah.
And then I was not expecting the movie to sort of like flip that all on its head. By the end, you're like, oh, actually, the parents, and especially when she goes back to them and sort of realizes what has been going on, they don't punish her. They give her the support in her own failure. That they were good enough parents to let her take an action, have a mistake, and then support her in that mistake instead of blaming
Mm-hmm.
her or saying, "Oh, you can't go off with this guy. We're putting our foot down." Like, no, actually, they started off as parents. I'm like, these parents are like too controlling. I don't think they're doing a good job. And by the end of the movie, I'm like, wow, Alfred Molina, like, what an amazing dad, and what
Yeah.
you were able to do to give Carey Mulligan that support in all these different ways. And actually putting her needs first. You think he's
Yeah.
not doing that in the beginning, but then when she expresses desires, he lets her pursue them, even though they end up blowing up in her face and being giant mistakes. But he's there to support her. And I thought that was just very surprising, unexpected. Like the first 20 minutes, I'm like, I think I know what this entire movie is. And by the end of the movie, I was like, wow, like this went off in totally different directions. And it makes you think about everything that's kind of, going on in the film. Other than I think Skarsgård is just like a bad guy. I don't think they
Mm-hmm.
give him a lot of sympathy, which you shouldn't, I think, in
No.
this movie. Though I do find it fascinating. There's two characters that are his friends. They're also,
Right.
I think they're a married couple that
Yep.
are that is friends that, she ends up joining their friend circle and they kind of pal around. And at the end of the film, there's a great scene where she goes back to them and said, "You knew this was happening. You knew he was married. You knew what he was doing, and you still didn't say anything to me." And they're like, "Well, that's not my place. Like we're still
Yeah.
having a good time. Like that's up to you. Like, if you're doing this, you're doing this. We're not going to judge you or get upset by it." And I thought that also is a lot of the grayness of the adult world too. It's
Mm-hmm.
not super simple of like right and wrong and good. You're supposed to do this. You're supposed to do this. And maybe you're supposed to, but you
Right.
don't usually do it. There's other reasons why you might be like, look, if he wants to keep bringing these young women around, who are we to kind of say to him he can't, or to not be friends with her? I mean, I think they were genuinely friends to her and trying to like, give her the life that she thought she wanted. But I thought that was just a very powerful scene that added some new layers even to those characters, which you're sort of suspicious of
Yeah,
in throughout the film.
exactly. And when you do find out what's going on, like then you can trace back that Dominic Cooper has these looks and
Mm-hmm.
questions throughout the movie,
Right.
which they mean a lot more because they know what's been
Right.
going on. And then I have to say, Rosamund Pike as sort of the dim-witted, beautiful blonde friend is
Yeah.
just amazing.
She's
in
very
this
good
movie.
in this role.
So
Yeah.
good. Like
Yeah.
just saying, communicating so much with very little about who
Mm-hmm.
this person is, that on the face of it you can write her off that, oh, she's just in there for the parties and the money and the beautiful dresses, but there's actually a sadness to her too.
Mm-hmm.
and she knows actually what her place is, and she's probably had this internal conversation that, okay, I do want this life, so this is what I'm going to do in order to have that
Right.
life. You
Right.
could argue she's trapped, or maybe it's a choice, again, it's
Yeah.
great.
Right. Totally. Totally. And that's why I think that in the beginning of the film, or the first two acts, when she is very friendly with Carrie Mulligan and inviting her into this world and being very, very nice to her
Mhm.
too, she knows that, well, Carrie Mulligan wants this clearly. I mean, yeah, she doesn't know that there's an adulterer who's involved in this,
Right.
but instead of trying to tell her, no, you can't have this, she's letting her in. And I think that
Yeah.
is, whether it's right or wrong, it's something I think that's very realistically believable as an act that this type of character would do. So yeah, all in all, I think the movie is not only a great coming of age in terms of showing the fact that you might think adulthood is one thing, because you do. When you're a teenager, you imagine
Right.
all these things, and oh, this is perfect, and all this stuff. Much like we were talking about with About a Boy, Hugh Grant's life, you would assume if you're a 15-year-old boy, that's the life that you would want. But it's actually not what you want, actually. And same thing with Carrie Mulligan, imagines, oh, she wants to go to all these nice parties and just be,
Mhm.
flit around in this upper class life. And actually, you don't really necessarily want that, or it's not what's cracked up to be. I think that's more of the lesson of
Yeah,
this
or if
film.
you do, there's more to life. And I think there's a
Right.
great monologue at the very end when she's at Oxford. She's just barking around with like another guy who's her age.
Hmm.
And she sort of is like, I feel wiser. And when this guy that she's presumably dating sort of talks about, oh, I'll take you to Paris, that she sort of kind of acts that I've never been there. I'm excited. So it's almost like she's reclaimed her innocence, but at the same time, there is some wisdom behind
Yes.
that, yeah, you can have these experiences, but you still also have to earn, your life, and you have to go through the path, like you said. So,
Exactly.
she's wiser for it.
Yeah, it was interesting too. That once I saw this is the first time I saw it. Right at the end, I was a little bit for actually a couple days just thinking about the ending and thinking it almost seemed to be like too neatly tied up. Like
Yeah.
she messes up, but then she gets everything she wants anyway. Even though, yeah, she did grow a little bit, but I almost was like, well, feels weird that she's not. There's something negative doesn't happen to her at the end. But then again, I think the way that end movie ends, like that monologue you just talked about, is like, look, there's phases of your life that you have and they're over, and then you learn from this a new chapter, you turn the page, and it doesn't necessarily have to be your whole life is over, or now all of a sudden
Mhm.
she's kicked out of her parents' house and punished by the story. And that actually kind of made it sit better with me the more I thought about it. So, you know what, actually it's a nice little fable in a way of someone who grew up too quickly, learned her lesson, and now she's just the wiser for it, and is going to have a more fulfilling life moving forward because of those mistakes that she made. But
Yeah.
definitely when it first ended, I'm like, this feels like not earned to me. It didn't sit well with me. And then as I thought about it more, I was like, okay, actually, I like this. It adds like sort of an innocence to the film in a way, that
Yeah.
I thought was really great. Like this movie, I thought was fantastic.
It's yeah.
Thanks for putting it on the list, or I'm glad you did, I should say, because it, yeah, definitely fits the themes. Also, just a great film that I'm glad I saw.
I'm so happy you liked it. Yeah, on that part, to me, like that is true to life, at least my life. Because when I had these moments of, being seduced by people and
Hmm.
maybe not caring about school and such, my parents were the same way. They supported me through it. And then I came out of it and it was a new chapter. And guess what? It wasn't like I was totally, better for it forever, forever. No,
Hmm.
it takes a while. So, like you said, like this is just this chapter.
Hmm.
Is she gonna dream something else up in Oxford and maybe make a wrong decision or wrong choice? Of course,
Right.
she will.
Hmm.
That's just what life is. But we're just getting this slice of her life. I mean, I would
Hmm.
love to see a sequel of this movie that what happens to her in Oxford,
Hmm.
because it's just what makes us,
Right.
some
No.
people will always want a little bit more, like a little star out there that they want to go and chase. And that comes with a lot of wonderment and adventure, but it also comes with some learning.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I also want to call out, because I like when this kind of thing happens, but the screenplay was written by Nick Hornby. Now it was not his original book,
Yep.
but I always find it interesting when artists end up on our list more than once, whether they're actors or especially when it's writers. It's very interesting. So I just liked that that was a happenstance that, About a Boy co-written screenplay by him, but based on his book. And now this is one of his screenplays. I think it's also based on a book or a short story that he didn't write, but I
Right.
believe it's not a wholesome original work. But interesting that he shows up twice on this list for
That's
us.
awesome. Yeah, I think Hornby has coming of age down because High Fidelity also
Right.
is a coming of age movie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. A more stunted, sort of a stunted adulthood kind of thing, much
Exactly.
like a Bad Boy. And in a way, this is kind of the opposite. Instead of a stunted adulthood, it's someone going into adulthood too quickly.
Exactly.
And they actually should have been holding back versus the characters in High Fidelity and About a Boy. They needed some growing up still to do, even though they were older. So it's interesting that
Exactly.
he can do both. That's pretty cool.
He can do both. And that's I was gonna say, a marker of a great movie, to your point, that all the characters are so well fleshed out. Like, I would watch a movie about Alfred Molina
Oh,
and
yeah.
his marriage. I would watch a movie about
Mhm.
Dominic Cooper and Rosamund Pike in
Oh,
their
yeah.
life, because they are stunted adults in their own way. And
Yes.
they are your
Yes.
typical Nick Hornby characters, kind of
Mhm.
stuck in their own lives, but still having a good time, seemingly. So good. I'm so glad you like this movie.
Yeah, it's a great film. If listeners have not seen this, definitely check it out. Hey there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through 3 of our favorite movies. Subscribe right now, or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.